In the nursing home, elderly residents sit on the lawn. A caregiver gently encourages them to write poetry. Don't overthink it. Just write what's in your heart. They pick up colored pencils and scribble their thoughts in shaky handwriting. Only Ae-sun stays silent. At 70, she stares at the blank paper, then chooses a blue crayon. As the tip glides across the page, waves form, 70 years of life distilled into a single word. Mom! Her memory drifts back to Jeju Island in 1960. 9-year-old Ae-sun, fresh from winning a poetry contest, runs excitedly to the shore to find her mother, Gwang-rai. A haenyeo or a female sea diver, Gwang-rai spends her days in the icy waters, hunting for seafood to make ends meet. Ae-sun shouts until her voice grows hoarse, but her mother doesn't look up, too focused on catching the most valuable abalone. Earning money matters more than sharing her daughter's joy. Behind Ae-sun stands Yang Gwansik, the fishmonger's son, who always follows her around like a lovesick puppy. The haenyeo tease, "If a diver's daughter marries a fish seller's son, the whole sea will be yours." But Ae-sun only feels frustration. Her mother ignores her and won't take her home. Gwang-rai's life is hard. Her first husband, a Mr. O, died young. Her second husband is lazy and useless. She carries the family's burdens alone, which is why she refuses to bring Ae-sun with her. She's too poor to give her daughter a good life. Gritting her teeth, she leaves Ae-sun with her late husband's family so the girl can get an education and escape this hardship. But the O's play favorites, never giving Ae-sun her share of the yellow croaker at meals. When Gwang-rai hears this, her heart breaks. Yet for her daughter's future, she forces herself to send her away again. Then one day, Gwang-rai storms into the O's house clutching a yellow croaker, yanking Ae-sun away from the dishes amid their curses. In those days, a woman had to act crazy just to earn a shred of respect. Gwang-rai walks ahead with a lantern, while Ae-sun skips behind, secretly glad the O's never gave her fish. Now she gets to live with her mom. Gwang-rai sighs. "Why do you always follow me?" Ae-sun looks up, her voice bright. "Because you're my mom," Gwang-rai teases. "If you really love me, grow up fast and give me 101 every day." Ae-sun's eyes light up. Her mother did read her poem. Gwang-rai always claims poetry is useless, yet she keeps Ae-sun's clumsy abalone tucked safely away. The poem says, "Abalone, abalone, nothing but abalone. Why won't mom come back to shore? Sell one abalone for 101. I'd buy just 1 day of her time. If I had money, I'd let her rest." By the lantern's glow, Gwang-rai wipes her tears in secret. She vows, "I'll make sure Ae-sun gets an education and leaves this life behind." The day Ae-sun is elected vice class president, she sobs at home. Gwang-rai assumes it's because her daughter is too competitive, until Gwansik arrives with red-rimmed eyes and explains. She got the most votes, but the teacher gave the class president role to another boy, just because his family is influential, and his parents take care of the teacher. That same boy also stole Ae-sun's poetry contest win. Gwang-rai doesn't sleep that night. The next morning, she puts on her best clothes, hides a borrowed pearl necklace under her collar, and walks into the school with half a year's savings. This haenyeo, who stands tall against the waves, bows her head for the first time. She tucks the banknotes into her homework notebook and hands it to the teacher with both hands. On the way home, the sea breeze makes the pearl necklace feel hot against her skin. Gwang-rai pats her daughter's head and says, "Don't end up like me, just accepting fate." Ae-sun suddenly blurts out, "Being vice class president is good too. When I grow up, I'll buy you a real pearl necklace." But spring is too short. The haenyeo's curse, lung disease, catches up with Gwang-rai. The women of Jeju take turns helping, but death comes faster than a typhoon. In her final moments, Gwang-rai grips her daughter's hand. "After I'm gone, go straight to your uncle. Make him pay for your education." July 1961. 10-year-old Ae-sun rests her head on her mother's lap as it grows cold. Everyone pities her for being so young, but the truth is, her mother was just as young when she left, only 29. 29-year-old Gwang-rai vanishes like a wave, quietly breaking against the rocks. Gwansik crouches by the door, silently offering food. Only when her stomach is full can she find the strength to cry. After her mother's death, grief comes in waves, day after day, never receding. Ae-sun stays with her stepfather's family for 6 long years. At 16, Ae-sun stands out in the noisy market in her school uniform. She sits by the cabbage stall with a book in hand, while Gwansik, the boy who once followed her around, is now a tall young man, shouting prices for her. The haenyeo tease, "That fool from the Yang family is smitten with this girl again." Gwansik's grandmother stomps her feet in anger and storms into the market to discipline Ae-sun. Gwansik blocks her way, and Ae-sun seizes the chance to run, yelling over her shoulder, "I don't even want you, Gwansik!" She loves his kindness but hates his silence. Yet Gwansik understands. Ae-sun's sharp words are just armor. She should have been a poet, but she's trapped on this island like a bird with clipped wings. To him, Ae-sun glows, deserving of a better world. But Gwansik's grandmother, the island's feared shaman, is convinced Ae-sun is possessed by her dead mother, luring her grandson. The cruel words sting, and Ae-sun grabs her pride like a shield, snapping at Gwansik. "I'll marry someone in Seoul! Who'd want an illiterate like you who doesn't even know the poem Nostalgia?" Yet the next second, she shoves her hand into Gwansik's pocket. They walk through the rapeseed fields, awkward but sweet. Truth is, Ae-sun fell for him at 14. But Gwansik is a quiet man, showing his care in silence. His grandmother's disdain feeds her doubts, until one fight she lashes out. "Are you only nice to me because you pity me?" Gwansik suddenly kisses her. In that moment, the rapeseed flowers turn into golden waves, sweeping the two young lovers away. Years later, this field becomes a Jeju landmark. When middle-aged Ae-sun sees tourists wandering through it on TV, she still smiles like a girl. The scent of those flowers, drifting from the past, is as sweet as ever. But spring is fickle, warm one moment, cold the next, and Ae-sun's life is about to be hit by an unexpected storm. Her stepfather marries Min-ok, who tries to take down Gwangrai's portrait the moment she steps inside. Furious, Ae-sun realizes her siblings have been won over, and her stepfather stays silent. Heartbroken, she decides to leave. Before going, following the agreement, Ae-sun asks her stepfather for the college tuition money, only to find him backing out of his promise. It's then she realizes she's been tricked. She spent all those years working as a free maid for nothing. With no options left, Ae-sun remembers her mother's dying words and stumbles back to the O family for help. But her cousin is drowning in debt, and her uncle coldly tells her, "After high school, go work in a factory and help pay off the family's debts." Ae-sun refuses outright. Gwansik finds her. The usually awkward boy suddenly straightens his back and nervously recites her favorite poem. Blushing, he vows, "In this lifetime, I'll do 3 things for Ae-sun: send her to college, make her a poet, and take her away from Jeju to live on the mainland." Ae-sun pulls herself together. She's Gwangrai's daughter. She won't give up. A bold plan takes shape. Why not run away to Busan? To spite Min-ok, she steals her ring and wears her yellow dress, taking her mother's portrait with her. Under cover of darkness, she meets Gwansik, who's brought his family's golden frog and is fully prepared. Before leaving, Ae-sun gives him one last chance to back out. But the usually timid Gwansik's eyes spark with excitement. They're in perfect sync, their plan is flawless. In Busan, Gwansik will work at a factory, and Ae-sun will take the college entrance exam. If they work hard, they'll find a way. But reality hits hard. In Busan, their money is stolen, and they're tricked into a shady inn by a couple. The next morning, their belongings are gone. Ae-sun trembles with rage. "My mother's photo was in there!" They plot revenge, sneaking back to warn a new guest. Never turn off the lights at night. When the couple sees the lights still on upstairs, they fume but have to delay their scheme. Ae-sun and Gwansik decide to return late to steal back their things. Gwansik sweats nervously, but when Ae-sun calls him husband, his blood boils with determination. They search the inn carefully but find nothing. Taking the cash box instead, they're about to escape when Ae-sun spots the flower hairpin Gwansik gave her, their token of love, on the owner's daughter's head. Determined to get it back, Ae-sun gives them away. The couple wakes up. Gwansik grabs the cash box and bolts. But Ae-sun is caught by the owner's wife, her life hanging by a thread. At the last second, Gwansik, using his athlete's reflexes, pretends to surrender the box, then sprints full speed at the owner's wife. Ae-sun fights back too, yanking the owner's wife's hair and turning the tables. Their explosive brawl lands them in jail. The police treat them harshly, suspecting they're spies. Facing authority, Ae-sun argues fiercely without fear. When Gwansik's mother rushes over, Ae-sun feels guilty. After the two disappeared, the Yang family immediately reported them missing and searched frantically. Gwansik's mother even slept outside the police station to get updates quickly. Interestingly, Min-ok, another victim of the stolen belongings, stays calm, even indulgent. She doesn't care about the jewelry or clothes. She admires Ae-sun's courage to run away for love and dreams. As a woman, she understands. Though they seem opposed, They're not enemies, just protecting what they cherish. Over the years, their paths keep crossing, and a special bond quietly grows between Jeju and Busan. But that's later. Right now, courage becomes disaster. The reckless escape has unexpected consequences, pushing Ae-sun into despair. Gwon-sik's mother fights stubbornly to get their luggage back and sends the greedy landlady to jail. She doesn't blame Ae-sun. But back in Jeju, a storm hits. News of their elopement spreads like wildfire. Ae-sun is expelled, losing her chance at education. Ironically, Gwon-sik faces no consequences. For men, eloping is bold. For women, it's shameful. Society dismisses it as a youthful stunt for him but crushes her future under gossip's weight. Gwon-sik fights for fairness, but it's futile. The Yangs force them apart, looking down on Ae-sun even more. While Gwon-sik is locked at home, starving in protest, Ae-sun is forced to meet Busangil, a middle-aged shipowner who crunches sugar cubes and condescends. Despite your bad reputation, I'll let it slide. The O's see this clearly. Ae-sun's lost her future, so marrying a wealthy widower for dowry is better. Gwon-sik drags her to a rapeseed field. Marry me! He fumbles with a ring bought with all his savings in Busan. Ae-sun throws it into the flowers. Busangil can send me to college! You'll just hold me back! She resents fate's unfairness and refuses a life of poverty. Now Gwon-sik is her obstacle. Only his absence can bring her a better life. Heartbroken, he respects her choice. Defeated, he accepts his coach's offer to train on the mainland. But this is his mother's plan. She pretended to be kind, gaining Ae-sun's trust, just to break them up. She tells Ae-sun Gwon-sik has always been one of the top 4 athletes in Jeju Island with a bright future ahead. Sports are supposed to be his dream, but for love, he never talks about it. That's only half true. While Gwon-sik is indeed strong in sports, he doesn't love it at all. In fact, he even hates it. Gwon-sik knows he doesn't do well in school, and his family is poor. If he wants to go to Seoul with Ae-sun, sports are his only way out. So for love, he trains hard. Cause and effect are reversed. The meaning changes entirely. Ae-sun, blinded by her care for him, doesn't see through the lie. She doesn't want to hold Gwon-sik back or leave him with nothing, so she pushes him away, heartbroken. To Ae-sun, the real obstacle was never Gwon-sik, it was herself. That night, Ae-sun returns to the rapeseed field. She kneels, frantically searching for the ring, tears streaming down her face before she even realizes it. But she never finds it. Years later, a little girl named Hyren visits Jeju with her parents to see the spring flowers. As if guided by fate, she bends down, brushes away the dirt, and finds the ring. That ring witnessed Ae-sun and Gwon-sik's love, and now it ties Hyren to Ae-sun. Fate has its own plans. When the time is right, the truth will come out. Back to 1968. This spring is destined for change. The wedding day nears, but the moment Ae-sun puts on the dress, she hesitates. As a child, she used to shout, "I'll be the head of the Fishermen's Union. I'll be president. I'll have everything. Because I'm Ae-sun. Ae-sun can do anything." Her mother and the Haenyeo aunties would laugh, cheering her on without hesitation. Gwon-sik, hiding nearby, would mumble along, "If Ae-sun becomes president, I'll be the first gentleman." Under the blue sky, dreams and love felt so bright. But now, the future is clouded. Rain pours outside like her mother's tears. If she marries into the Bu family, she'll be trapped in a golden cage, fading away. At the last moment, Ae-sun regrets it. She begs Busangil, "Can we call off the wedding? Just hire me as a nanny or maid." He curses at her, accidentally exposing the truth. "Why pay for what I get by marrying you?" So Ae-sun runs straight to the shore, screaming Gwon-sik's name. That same day, Gwon-sik is leaving Jeju. The boat is already far when Ae-sun collapses on the rocks, sobbing. Her voice carries on the wind, reaching Gwon-sik's heart. Then, splash, like a stubborn fish, he cuts through the waves and swims back. When they cling to each other, soaked and shaking, the Haenyeo cheer. But Gwon-sik's grandmother just sighs and reluctantly agrees to the marriage. 8 months later, young Myung is born. Counting the days, she was conceived during that chaotic escape in Busan. The family jokes, "All of us are from Jeju, only Myung is a Busan girl." Married life isn't easy. Gwon-sik is a good husband, but the Yang family torments Ae-sun for not bearing a son. The grandmother scatters red beans on her to purge evil. The mother-in-law forces her to kneel and pray daily. Worst of all, they secretly take 5-year-old Myung to train as a Haenyeo. Just as Gwangrai once fought to keep Ae-sun from that dangerous path, Ae-sun refuses to let her daughter follow it. One day, Ae-sun rushes home excitedly, bringing Mayong a tricycle, a gift from Min-ok. Min-ok and Ae-sun's stepfather are leaving soon. Before they go, Ae-sun visits the old house. After the Busan incident, Ae-sun learns that Min-ok didn't expose her. Her attitude toward Min-ok shifts slightly. Min-ok admires Ae-sun's courage and pities her struggles in her in-laws' home. The two reconcile. Min-ok says the tricycle was meant as a scholarship fund for Mayong. Touched, Ae-sun feels a deeper bond with her, both now mothers who understand each other's hardships. But this small tricycle stirs up chaos in the Yang household. When Grandma shouts, "Girls shouldn't ride bikes," Ae-sun finally snaps. Her eyes burn with anger. If my daughter can't even ride a bike, what future does she have? The bookish girl she once was is now trapped in a tiny kitchen, but she refuses to let her daughter suffer the same fate. Ae-sun wants her to have every freedom, to do whatever she dreams of. Thankfully, Gwon-sik stands by her. He firmly tells her, Mayong can ride, and so can you. With their persistence, Mayong gets her bike. This brave young couple, with their small but determined shoulders, carves out a world of freedom for their daughter. From that tricycle onward, her parents fight for her rights, inch by inch. On Jeju Island, tradition dictates that men and women eat separately. Even simple pea rice favors the men's bowls. Most peas go to them. But Mayong loves peas and often goes hungry. Seeing this, Gwon-sik calmly turns and picks peas into his daughter's bowl. Then he declares, "From now on, I'm eating with my wife and daughter." Grandma is so furious when Grandma tries to punish Mayong again. Ae-sun flips the incense table. "She's my daughter, not the Yang family's slave." That night, the couple scrapes together money to rent a room in a grocery store. They move into the attic with Mayong. It's just one small room, but it's a space of freedom, won by her parents. Soon, Ae-sun is pregnant again. Joy mixes with worry as life's challenges grow. Busangil's schemes cost Gwon-sik his job, plunging the young family into crisis. Miraculously, a mysterious benefactor pays 3 months' rent. The couple wonders who it could be, but the money won't last forever. Desperate, Gwon-sik secretly boards Busangil's fishing boat, enduring beatings and abuse to earn money. Only when the net severs his finger does Ae-sun learn the truth. Heartbroken, she swallows her pride and visits Bu's home. After Ae-sun's runaway marriage, Bu married a woman named Yangran. Ae-sun humbly asks Yangran to persuade Bu to stop targeting Gwon-sik. Kind but powerless, Yangran apologizes. In their talk, Ae-sun discovers the truth. After Gwon-sik's injury, Bu deliberately delayed the boat's return, worsening the damage and leaving Gwon-sik permanently disabled. Her finger can no longer straighten. At this, Ae-sun completely loses her temper. With her big belly, she storms straight to the dock. There, Busangil is once again giving Gwon-sik a hard time. Seeing this, Ae-sun's last shred of rationality snaps. Without a second thought, she rushes forward, shielding her husband, and loudly declares that from now on, Gwon-sik will never work for him again. Busangil is stunned. Not backing down, Ae-sun curses him out thoroughly. As they walk, Ae-sun suddenly starts sobbing, tears streaming down her face. Watching his wife, Gwon-sik's heart softens. The way they protect each other is almost identical. Humiliated, Sangil retaliates even more fiercely. Gwon-sik can't board any fishing boats and is forced to take odd jobs, carrying bricks at construction sites, helping build roads, just to scrape by. A fisherman away from the sea is like a fish out of water. This strong, steel-willed man sinks into despair for the first time, worse than an unwanted cabbage in the field. Seeing her husband so defeated breaks Ae-sun's heart. To lift his spirits, she puts on a brave face and suggests she could also work to support the family. Gwon-sik refuses without hesitation. Even in hardship, he still cares about his wife's dignity. To him, Ae-sun should always remain the shy, bookish girl she once was, especially now, with her pregnancy. The burden of life, he believes, should fall on him alone. Poverty is like a pencil mark pressed deep into paper. Even if you erase it, the imprint remains. This invisible mark also etches itself into Mayong's heart. Years later, Mayong is a top graduate of Seoul University, smart, driven, but also stubborn and sensitive. When Ae-sun lightly complains about her buying a closet full of shoes, a simple question is enough to trigger her. She snaps back coldly. Vanity is a craving of the heart. When you're too poor as a child and your desires go unmet, once you start earning money, you spend recklessly to make up for it. Faced with her daughter's accusation, Ae-sun feels both guilty and wrong. She weakly defends herself, saying they did their best to give Mayong a good life within their means. It wasn't that they didn't want to spend on her, but they were truly poor. Mayong retorts, "Is poverty something to boast about? Should pity be praised?" In the heat of the argument, she even blurts out that she'd never marry a poor man like her mother did, struggling to make ends meet her whole life. Her words cut Ae-sun deep. After a long silence, Ae-sun finally speaks, laughing at herself. "You're right. Don't end up like me." But she also wants to tell her daughter that her life wasn't wasted. She's had countless shining moments too. The irony is, Mayong understands everything. Deep down, she isn't truly blaming her parents. In fact, she loves them deeply. Perhaps because they gave her enough love and security, she can always be the unfiltered little girl around them. Parents dwell on what they couldn't give, while children dwell on what they never get. Back to 1973. The relentless summer heat still scorches their lives. With no way out, Ae-sun goes to the O family, but her pride chokes her throat. She can't bring herself to beg. Only silent tears fall. Yet, to her surprise, Grandma notices her struggle. Late at night, she quietly slips into the grocery store and hands Ae-sun her life savings, money she'd set aside for her own coffin. "Buy a boat," says the woman who once treated her harshly. "Your mother begged me to help you once before she died." With a heavy sigh, Grandma shares a buried memory. Before Gwaenrai passed, she asked Grandma to take a photo with her. Haenyo believed that once a picture was taken, it would soon become a funeral portrait. Knowing her time was near, Gwaenrai used her last strength to secure a promise for Ae-sun. Guilt-ridden, Grandma admits she was too harsh on her daughter-in-law and failed to care for her son's child. Gwaenrai said if Ae-sun ever came for help, it meant she'd hit a wall she couldn't climb. She pleaded with Grandma, just once. Help her once, and we're even. Grandma kept her word. With the money, they buy a new boat. On its maiden voyage, sunlight turns the sea into shattered gold. Gwansik becomes the captain. Luck follows. Their first son, Mayong, is born, easing tensions between Ae-sun and her mother-in-law. Gwansik's fishing profits grow. He buys back Gwaenrai's old house, their new home. Overwhelmed, Ae-sun cries. After years of drifting, this is her first real home. Gwaenrai's photo hangs on the wall, beside Ae-sun's award-winning poem. Gwansik even buys her a brand-new mother-of-pearl wardrobe. Sitting in front of it, they take their first family portrait, Ae-sun and Gwansik, holding Mayong and Mayong, while Mayong waits in Ae-sun's belly. Before Mayong's birth, Gwansik is away at sea. In a daze, Ae-sun dreams of her mother, who tells her a neighbor has a truck. Suddenly, contractions hit. Thanks to her mother's guidance, Ae-sun catches a ride and safely delivers Mayong. Maybe Gwaenrai never left. Maybe she's been here all along, watching over her daughter. Mayong's arrival seems to bring more luck. Gwansik's voyages thrive, filling their pockets. 4 years later, backed by the Haenyo, Ae-sun becomes vice president of the Fishing Association. The president, Busangil, resents her and tries to sabotage her, but he can't fight public support. In those days, social dancing is seen as immoral. The Fishermen's Association, following government orders, cracks down hard on the activity. Among the dancers is Yongran, Busangil's wife. Yongran not only comes herself but also brings her young daughter, Hyeon-suk. Ae-sun quickly lets Yongran escape. In her rush, Yongran leaves behind a shoe, like a fleeing Cinderella. Later, she thanks Ae-sun and confesses. She dances to escape her suffocating marriage. Yongran already knows about Ae-sun's history with Busangil. She deeply admires Ae-sun, envying her for never stepping into a cage and choosing love and freedom instead. Yongran's eyes are filled with sorrow. Ae-sun sighs, unsure how to comfort her. Before parting, Yongran patiently teaches her daughter, "In the future, keep your eyes open and choose a man like Gwansik." Little does she know, fate's prophecy has already been written at this moment. It's a quiet summer night in 1978. The boat that belongs to them sways gently under the lantern light. Gwansik stands on the deck, reaching out to Ae-sun, inviting his wife to name the boat, Jiamundong-ho or Gold Silver Bronze. But Ae-sun hesitates. According to island tradition, a woman boarding a ship brings bad luck. Before she can react, Mayong hops onto the boat. Watching her daughter, Ae-sun can't bring herself to say the word bad luck. So, she breaks the taboo first. That summer in 1978, they lose 4-year-old Mayong. It happens too fast, too suddenly, like a bizarre dream filled with absurdity. So, what happens next? A typhoon strikes, pouring rain, and Jeju Island trembles like a small boat in the storm. Gwansik is called away to build a retaining wall, while Ae-sun stays home with Eun Myong and Dong Myong, waiting for GM Myong to return. Dong Myong, craving sweets, knocks over the sugar jar before finishing his meal. Ae-sun scolds him, and he bursts into tears, reaching out from behind her, begging to be held. But she's too busy cleaning up to comfort him. Suddenly, someone outside shouts, "GM Myong is hurt!" Ae-sun panics and rushes out without a second thought. Passing a neighbor's house with a truck, she yells as usual, asking them to watch the kids. The truck ant waves her off, so Ae-sun leaves, relieved. Unbeknownst to her, the ant is dozing in front of the TV and doesn't hear a thing. The seed of tragedy is planted. Soon, Ae-sun finds GM Myong. She was hit by a motorcycle while riding her bike but is unharmed. Relieved, Ae-sun returns home, only to find Eun Myong and Dong Myong missing. Her heart pounds as she searches frantically. Eun Myong is quickly found. He had gone to the breakwater, looking for his mother to help. Just as Ae-sun relaxes, she freezes. The boys weren't together. When she asks about his brother, Eun Myong is stunned. He thought Dong Myong was still at home. In truth, after Eun Myong left, Dong Myong toddled after him and vanished into the storm. News of Dong Myong's disappearance spreads. The entire island searches, but when they find him, it's too late. Ae-sun refuses to believe it. She clutches Dong Myong like a madwoman, whispering to her baby, rubbing his cold little hands. Meanwhile, Gwansik races to the scene after hearing the news. Ae-sun stares blankly at her husband and murmurs, "Dong Myong's dad, call an ambulance." Why hasn't anyone called an ambulance? Gwansik's heart, once unbreakable, shatters. The wind howls, and a father's wail drowns out the waves. After Dong Myong's death, the house becomes unbearably quiet. Ae-sun stares at the unwashed dishes on the table. The spoon Dong Myong used still sits in its place. The child who ate lunch here will never return for dinner. GM Myong and Eun Myong bury their guilt deep inside. GM Myong hides her perfect test scores, while Eun Myong keeps his head down all day. Seeing their children like this, Ae-sun and Gwansik finally wake up. Their grief has become chains around the kids. They allow themselves just 3 days to weep. On the 4th day, Gwansik forces down a big bowl of rice and heads out to fish. Ae-sun drags herself to the kitchen, only to find a mountain of ingredients quietly left by villagers. This simple kindness has always surrounded them. Memories resurface one by one. The 3 months' rent back then was secretly paid by Min-ok, who carried guilt for crushing Ae-sun's college dream and stealing her youth. The elderly landlords often slipped food to them, careful not to hurt their pride. The old woman would pour just enough rice into their jar a night, enough for 3. After Dong Myong's death, even Gwansik's mother, who never got along with Ae-sun, doesn't blame her. "A mother who loses her child cries more tears than the ocean holds," she says, and Gwangrai's dying words echo in Ae-sun's ears. "A haenyeo fights death countless times, but she always finds a reason to stand up and keep fighting. Never surrender." In the fall of 1987, GM Myong enters Seoul National University. At the gate, a man named Yangbum falls for her at first sight. He secretly snaps her photo. When their eyes meet, their hearts sink. Love whirls in fast, chaotic, and sweet. They start dating soon after. Yangbum is devoted, quick to tears, and GM Myong, usually tough, shows him her rare sides: anger, coyness, pouting. He embraces them all. Like any young couple, they recklessly spend love in their prime. Their parents are in life's autumn, but their spring has just begun. They love fiercely, fight fiercely, break up 100 times, and reunite 101. First love burns hot, consuming yet unstoppable. Ae-sun was like this. So is GM Myong. That same year, the whole country prepares for the 1988 Seoul Olympics, Jeju included. When Busangil bulldozes haenyeo stalls for city beautification, Ae-sun lies down in front of the excavator. A political storm erupts. During the fishing cooperative elections, the once shy bookish girl runs for chairwoman. Gwansik clumsily campaigns for her with banana milk, drawing laughs from crewmates. "If your wife outranks you, what does that make you?" they taunt. To Gwansik, Ae-sun is capable and intelligent. She deserves a bigger stage to make history. As the election heats up, Eun Myong, the rebellious son, causes trouble. He secretly removes the emblems from teachers' cars and sells them to classmates for good luck on college exams. Just as Boo Sangil tries to exploit the scandal, he's caught having an affair with a matchmaker named Misuk. The sex scandal ensures Ae-sun's victory, making her Jeju Island's first female association president. Autumn is harvest season. The persimmon tree in the yard is heavy with fruit, planted by Guangrai. It took Ae-sun 30 years to rise from vice president to president. Though her mother is gone, the tree remains, witnessing her daughter's achievements. Unlike her mother, Myung struggles in Seoul. The bustling city offers new experiences but also harsh realities. To earn money, she tutors a wealthy family but faces an unexpected trap. They offer her a Seoul apartment in exchange for taking their child's college entrance exam. Myung refuses. Her parents' teachings won't let her betray her conscience. But her honesty brings revenge. The family accuses her of stealing a diamond ring and sends her to the police station. Meanwhile, Gwon-sik waits in the cold outside Seoul National University for his daughter. In the summer of 1987, he rescued a drowning man, earning a government award and an invitation to visit the mainland museum. Using this chance, he decides to see Myung, only to find her name missing from the dormitory list. His heart breaks. Her life in Seoul isn't as smooth as she claimed. Without their parents' protection, the children face a brutal world. Myung, alone from Jeju to Seoul, is overwhelmed by challenges she never imagined. At the police station, Myung defends herself stubbornly, just like Ae-sun once did in Busan. The charges are dropped, but she doesn't know her parents intervened. A maid in the wealthy household, who once stayed at the same shady Busan inn, witnessed everything. Remembering how Ae-sun and Gwon-sik had warned her to guard her belongings years ago, she recognizes Myung's face and pressures the family to clear her name. The kindness Ae-sun and Gwon-sik once showed now protects their daughter. After leaving the station, Myung gets a call from her mother. Hearing Ae-sun's worried voice, she fights back tears, her emotions twisting into anger. It's abalone season, and Ae-sun spends her days selling by the roadside, her back aching. Frustrated, Myung snaps. Why won't her mother rent a proper store instead of suffering? Her concern comes out as blame. She's angry that Ae-sun is poor, and angrier that it's partly because of her. Her parents gave everything to send her to Seoul, but in this glittering city, their small island life seems insignificant. Ae-sun understands her daughter's tangled feelings and takes the scolding gently. She then tells her, "Your father went to the mainland museum. He'll visit you on the way." When Myung arrives at the school and sees her father waiting in the cold wind, she feels both heartache and frustration. At the dinner table, after a few glasses of soju, she finally breaks down. "My professor recommended me for a study program in Japan, but we don't have the money." Gwon-sik quickly reassures her. The sea always has fish, but they both know some gaps can't be filled by fishing. When they part, Myung realizes her father lied. The museum isn't near the school at all. He didn't just pass by, he went out of his way just to see her. Watching his face pressed against the car window, she can't hold back her tears. Gwon-sik murmurs to himself, "How could I ever leave this little one?" To him, Myung will always be the little girl begging for squid. The cold winds of Seoul can't blow away the bond between father and daughter, just like the waves of Jeju Island always find their way home. Myung knows that no matter how far she goes, her parents' love will always be her strongest support. Meanwhile, Myung and Yangbum's relationship is full of ups and downs. She breaks up with him 8 times, but he never gives up. Before Yangbum enlists in the military, they split again. During his first leave, he rushes to Seoul to win her back. Ironically, while standing awkwardly with flowers outside her dorm, he runs into Gwon-sik. Nervous under his glare, Yangbum stammers, but Gwon-sik only glares harder. Even though he knows the kid is sincere, he refuses to soften and warns him to stay away from Myung. But young love can't be stopped. Before Yangbum returns to the army, they reconcile. On the platform, they cry messy tears as they say goodbye. Yangbum sniffles and says he doesn't care how many times they break up, as long as she marries him in the end. Myung, still crying, replies, "Who knows what the future holds?" At the same time, Ae-sun notices Gwon-sik's low spirits after returning from Seoul. It turns out Myung's professor offered to fund her studies in Japan. Though grateful, she refuses, not wanting to owe anyone. Instead, she asks her family to send a box of tangerines as thanks. Ae-sun feels both heartbroken and guilty. Her daughter would rather owe a professor than burden her parents. Frantic, Ae-sun asks how much money she needs, but her unconditional devotion only adds to Myung's stress. They argue, the call ends abruptly, and both are left upset. The guilt isn't one-sided. Ae-sun also feels ashamed. Their daughter is brilliant, but they're too poor to give her better opportunities, leaving her with a debt of gratitude. The thought weighs on Ae-sun. After much deliberation, she and Gwansik decide to sell their big house, move into a small apartment, and fund Myung's studies. In 1988, Myung boards a flight to Japan. Ae-sun stands outside their new apartment, looking up at the sky. In this moment, it feels like she's fulfilling her own unrealized dreams. But Myung is bitter, convinced his parents favor his sister. To him, their bias is obvious. They've always been proud of Myung, willing to sacrifice everything for her. But when it comes to him, all he gets is criticism. In their eyes, he's slow, gets bad grades, and causes trouble, nothing like his sister. Even making friends is a problem. Ae-sun forbids him from hanging out with Cheolong, the class troublemaker who's always slacking off. Myung fumes. Why can't they see him for who he is? She feels her parents are biased. They look down on underachievers and even on her. The Haenyeo warn her. Even the smallest raindrop can bruise a tender bud over time. After sending Gwansik off, the family's savings are drained. Ae-sun gives up her dream of opening a shop. 3 Haenyeo aunts pool money to rent the space, hoping to help her, but Ae-sun refuses with a smile. She only borrows a spot under the eaves to set up a stall outside the shop, deliberately avoiding seafood to sell side dishes instead, never competing with the Haenyeo. Deep down, Ae-sun is still that shy bookish girl. She's grateful, never oversteps, and earns her keep with her own hands. Life is hard, but she keeps her dignity. Days pass. In 1990, Myung returns from studying abroad. She's seen the wider world but must now face poverty again. She moves into a new boarding house, a shabby room with a stingy landlord who won't even fix the lock. To save money, she endures it. But soon, things get awkward. Myung accidentally gets tangled in the landlord's daughter's love troubles. The daughter is dating a poor artist named Chung-sip, whom the landlord despises. When the landlord demands they break up, the daughter refuses. One day, she sneaks Chung-sip into the house while her parents are out. But the landlord comes home early. In a panic, Chung-sip begs Myung for help. Seeing his desperate eyes, she softens and hides him in the closet, only for the landlord to find him anyway. It ends in shouting. This is how Myung and Chung-sip first meet, chaotic and strange. One is scruffy, the other broke. A poor artist and a poor student, seeing each other at their worst. Neither knows this is fate's beginning. Meanwhile, in Jeju, a closet hides unexpected fate. Myung's girlfriend turns out to be Hyun-suk, the daughter of Busangil. Ae-sun and Gwansik nearly faint. This bond spans 2 generations, tangled and inescapable. Youngran once told Hyun-suk to marry a man like Gwansik, and now, by chance, it's happening. Back in the city, Myung feels lost. She sees society's lies. Life isn't like on TV. Studying abroad didn't magically elevate her. Times have changed. Class gaps are harder to cross. Her tutoring ads get no replies. Standing at the bulletin board, she sighs, then bumps into Chung-sip again. To repay her for saving him, Chung-sip gets her a part-time job selling tickets at the Can Theater. Now they're co-workers. Chung-sip paints movie posters there, sometimes runs the projector. The boss yells at him daily for painting his own way, but he doesn't care, earning the nickname Picasso of the Can basement. Luckily, the theater folks are kind. The boss scolds but relents. Myung sees another side of Chung-sip, but they remain just nodding acquaintances. Her heart still belongs to Yangbum. After his military service, Yangbum studies in the U.S. In fall 1990, the moment he returns, he rushes to the theater to see her. Reunited, the young lovers are overjoyed. They hug in the screening room. Chung-sip sees it all. His relationship with the landlord's daughter has hit a rough patch, leaving him disheartened, a stark contrast to Myung, who is floating on cloud 9. But her happiness doesn't last long. After work, she excitedly brings Yangbum home. Walking up the long slope, they reach the highest platform, where the largest Christmas tree in all of Korea stands. But as they go deeper, Yangbum's face darkens. The dim alleys, messy houses, and crude graffiti make him uneasy. Worried for his girlfriend's safety, he suggests they move, either find a new place or live in his apartment. Though well-meaning, his words sting Myung. She snaps, kicking him out on the spot. The stark gap between rich and poor is like a sharp needle, piercing their hearts. Yet, there's no easy solution. Meanwhile, Chung-sip and the landlord's daughter also clash, over money. The landlord owns a factory and lives comfortably, while Chung-sip struggles to make ends meet. Even dates are limited to cheap cold noodles. Love is a sweet drug, numbing reality for a while, But when the high fades, only bitterness remains. The landlord's daughter accuses him of being too proud, wasting time on worthless art. He fires back, calling her unfaithful for dating while meeting other suitors. Jian Myung, who just came to deliver food, gets dragged into the mess. Mistaken as Chung-sip's new flame, she tries to explain, but it's no use. From then on, the landlord's daughter kicks Jian Myung's shoes outside as petty revenge. Jian Myung can only sigh, blaming her bad luck. Ae-sun and Gwon-sik's lives have reached autumn, but their children are in the bloom of spring. First, Eun Myung and Hyun-suk's forbidden love faces fierce opposition. When the Bu family hears, they erupt in anger. Bu Sangil storms in, tears down Hyun-suk's door, and threatens to shave her head and send her to a temple if she keeps seeing Eun Myung. Hyun-suk's brothers hunt down Eun Myung and beat him badly. Terrified, he wants to break up, but the moment they meet, they cling to each other, crying in the sea breeze, even considering running away together. Nearby, Haenyo laugh, joking that this runs in the family. Meanwhile, Jian Myung faces her own struggles. Overjoyed, she visits Yangbum's apartment for his birthday, only to run into his mother. The woman looks down on Jian Myung's background, mocking her for climbing the social ladder. Though Yangbum stands by his decision to marry her, he avoids outright defiance. Humiliated but determined, Jian Myung forces a smile, trying to please her future mother-in-law. Still, the woman refuses to budge, ruining the celebration. Furious and hurt, Jian Myung thinks, I'm my parents' precious child too. How did love reduce me to this? Yangbum keeps apologizing, but Jian Myung ignores him. She demands he make a choice, be a good husband or a good son. Yangbum protests. Who would abandon one for the other? Jian Myung replies firmly. My dad. Stunned, Yangbum freezes. Love is between two people, but marriage involves two families. The two reach a standstill. For Jian Myung, love isn't everything. She still needs to work hard, to survive in Seoul. Despite her heartbreak, she excels at her job. During a part-time shift, she accidentally does something kind. Outside the Kin Theater, a suspicious middle-aged woman lingers. The owner thinks she's a ticket scalper, but Jian Myung invites her in. After talking, she learns the woman is Chung-sip's mother. She's been wandering outside just to catch a glimpse of her son's paintings. Touched, Jian Myung treats her to a movie, her first ever. Grateful, the woman gives Jian Myung English books from her print shop and orders Chung-sip to carry them. Chung-sip thanks her too. Joking, Jian Myung says, then give me a painting. I bet it'll be worth a fortune someday. On their way home, Chung-sip buys her noodles. Over steaming bowls, he opens up. His landlord's daughter is marrying a noodle shop owner, ending his chances. Jian Myung encourages him to try again, to win them over with gifts. At least you won't regret not trying, she says. She believes the Picasso in the basement is better than any noodle shop heir. Chung-sip asks why she's so sure. Smiling, she says, because we're both our parents' treasures. That love gives us courage. She trusts he'll chase his dreams, just as she'll live proudly to make her parents proud. Moved, Chung-sip decides to try again. Little does he know, this choice will later save Jian Myung's life. That year, violent crimes surge in Korea. Watching the news, Ae-sun grows anxious. Every night after 9, she calls Jian Myung. The constant check-ins irritate Jian Myung. She snaps, don't you have your own life? Even if I stay out all night, what could you do? If I wanted to lie, I'd have fooled you long ago. She hangs up abruptly. Furious, Ae-sun clutches her chest. Gwon-sik suggests visiting Seoul. He hands her a lock he bought. Ae-sun should install it for their daughter. Every complaint Jian Myung casually makes, her parents remember. Ae-sun claims she'll stop caring, but she can't. As the ancestral rites approach, her unease grows. As a child, she was nearly kidnapped during the ceremony. Gwang-rai rescued her mysteriously, from a place neither had been before. Ae-sun asks, how did you find me? Gwang-rai says, a mother always has eyes in the back of her head. That's just how it is. Later, Gwang-rai confronted the human traffickers and gave them a beating. No mother would ever let anyone who hurt her child go unpunished. Now Ae-sun follows in Gwang-rai's footsteps, protecting her own daughter. A mother's intuition is always eerily accurate. Ae-sun can't shake her unease. Early in the morning, she takes a flight to Seoul, just in time to find Jian Myung unconscious from gas poisoning. The old, damaged flooring in her apartment has caused a leak. This small oversight nearly kills her. Frantic, Ae-sun screams for help. By chance, Chung-sip arrives and sees what's happening. Without hesitation, he lifts Myung and carries her through the narrow alleys to the waiting ambulance. Just like that, Myung escapes death. Later, Ae-sun will say it was Myung who saved her. Dong Myung's death still shadows her heart. As long as her children live, that's redemption enough. Ae-sun's life has been marked by cruel twists of fate. She believes constant worry wards off disaster, and this time, she's right. A mother fights destiny and wins her daughter back from death's grip. Ae-sun's anxious phone calls never stops, continuing until the very end of her life. Years later, when Myung can no longer receive those calls, she finally realizes how much she misses them. Back in December 1991, though Myung survives, the storm isn't over. When Yangbum hears the news, he rushes to the hospital. Seeing Myung in bed, he breaks down, begging her to marry him and move into a new apartment so she'll never suffer alone again. This tall man cries like a child. Myung doesn't know whether to laugh or cringe, feeling both embarrassed and secretly touched. Having faced death, the young couple cherishes each other even more, lost in their own little world. Ae-sun stands nearby, watching them with quiet amusement. She can't help but chuckle and tease. How did you manage to find a man just like your father? A daughter's happiness is a mother's greatest joy. But the next second, Ae-sun's smile freezes. During the conversation, she learns that Yangbum's mother looks down on Myung. Fury rises in Ae-sun's chest, and she marches up to Yangbum, demanding, "Who does she think she is?" Yangbum promises repeatedly that he'll handle his family and never let Myung be mistreated. But even with his assurances, Ae-sun can't shake her unease. The suffering she endured, she'll never let her daughter go through the same. Years later, history repeats itself. The young lovers stand at a crossroads, groping their way forward. Meanwhile, Chung-sip's love story comes to an end. He botches the meeting with his landlord's daughter, and they break up for good. Myung comforts him, saying she isn't worth it. Instead of moping, hold your head high and keep chasing your dreams. The two walk up the narrow alley, and Chung-sip tells Myung that he once accidentally witnessed her argument with Yangbum here. Myung pauses, then jokes, "We've really seen each other in so many awkward moments." As they talk, they reach the highest point and spot the largest Christmas tree in all of Korea. Suddenly, Chung-sip says softly, "Miss Yang, you're like a Christmas tree. No matter where you're placed, you do what you're meant to do." Myung tilts her head. "What's a Christmas tree meant to do?" "Shine." Chung-sip answers carefully, his voice steady. "Whether it's in a tiny basement room or a forgotten shop corner, a Christmas tree always sparkles and makes hearts flutter." Then, as if flustered, he quickly adds, "I just wanted to say something nice to you. Today felt right." Myung freezes. "Are you leaving for somewhere else?" His hidden feelings linger beneath the tree's shimmering lights. At that moment, he can't give her an answer, but soon, she'll understand what his words truly meant. Time slips by, and before they know it, Chung-sip's enlistment day arrives. He leaves in a hurry, without a single goodbye. After he's gone, Myung finds the painting he made for her in the cluttered basement. When she unrolls the canvas, she's stunned into silence. The image stares back at her, her own face, gazing into the distance with a radiant smile, glowing as if lit from within. That same year, Myung also enlists, parting ways with Hyun-suk for now. The turbulent year of 1993 finally ends. As the autumn wind howls, Myung waves farewell to her student days. She lands a good job at a major company and stays in Seoul. Meanwhile, her marriage to Yangbum moves forward. In February 1994, the parents meet for the first time. Ae-sun and Gwon-sik take it seriously, dressing carefully and flying to Seoul. But Yangbum's parents show up an hour late, without apology. Ae-sun brushes it off, warmly chatting and suggesting a Jeju Island wedding. Yangbum's mother instantly refuses. "My son won't go to Jeju to be treated like a circus act," she sneers. The wedding happens once, in Seoul. Ae-sun's smile fades, but for her daughter's sake, she swallows her anger. At dinner, Myung serves soup to everyone, except herself. Ae-sun's stomach knots. She used to do the same for her in-laws. Now her daughter has learned the same submissive habits. When Myung struggles to scoop the crispy rice from the pot, Yangbum's mother mocks her. Yangbum steps in, but Ae-sun stops him. Silently, she serves the soup herself. After a long pause, she finally speaks. "Myung is our treasure. That's why we never taught her these chores." The dinner ends awkwardly. Afterward, Ae-sun and Gwon-sik seethe. Their beloved daughter, raised with such care, treated with such disrespect, it cuts deep. Their hearts ache with fury and regret. They can reject the marriage outright, but both see that Mayong truly loves Yangbum, so they reluctantly agree. At this point, Mayong is also blinded by love. To stay with Yangbum, she abandons her principles and dignity, bending over backward to please his mother. But Yangbum's mother remains unimpressed. As wedding preparations progress, her unreasonable demands escalate. When choosing fabric for the dress, Ae-sun picks a pink floral pattern, but Yangbum's mother scoffs, calling it tacky, and forces them to switch to a dull, reddish-brown color. Seeing Mayong's discomfort, Ae-sun swallows her anger and keeps smiling. Then, during a private meeting, Yangbum's mother bluntly tells Ae-sun she dislikes Mayong and expects Ae-sun to side with her in opposing the marriage. She thinks Mayong, though smart, comes from a poor family, like a tree growing in the shade, never matching one bathed in sunlight. This time, Ae-sun snaps. She fires back and urges Mayong to reconsider. But Mayong, unaware of the truth, misunderstands and assumes even her mother thinks she's not good enough for Yangbum. To her in Gwansik, Mayong is the best child in the world. She pleads with her daughter. Even the smallest hardship in marriage would feel like a knife to their hearts. But Mayong won't listen. The young lovers keep recklessly defying the world. To rebel, Yangbum plans to move out of his mother's apartment, but before he can, his mother storms in, screaming at Mayong for poisoning him and ruining their relationship. Yangbum stands helplessly, only managing to yell, "Mom!" During the argument, Mayong learns the truth. Ae-sun only warned her because Yangbum's mother had insulted her and mocked Gwansik's job. Fury surges through Mayong. Coldly, she fires back word for word and calls off the engagement. She never felt inferior. Her patience was only for Yangbum's sake. But now that her parents are suffering, she's done. She realizes Yangbum, though kind, isn't like Gwansik. He lacks the courage to fight. His resistance is too weak to weather life's storms. A marriage without blessings would never last. In the summer of 1994, the engagement ends. Ironically, it's the same day Kim Il-sung dies. Mayong sobs in a taxi, hearing the news on the radio, and jokes that she's crying. Like a North Korean spy, ordinary joys and sorrows may seem small in the grand scheme, but to those living them, they're everything. Yet no matter how big, they fade into memory. Years later, Mayong and Yangbum have separate families. Yangbum gives in, marrying a girl his mother chose. No love, just benefits. At the wedding, only his mother smiles. Ironically, the daughter-in-law she picked is too strong-willed, always overshadowing her, while her son remains indifferent. The two grow distant, like strangers. With her hair now gray, she sits alone on the sofa, filled with bitterness and sorrow. Until the very end, she never understands what she did wrong. She hysterically confronts Yangbum, but he's too exhausted to argue or even blame her. By middle age, love and hate seem worn down, leaving only numbness. Yet no matter how much time may heal, the pain now is sharp and real. They dated for 7 years, then spent another year finally ending it. They hurt each other, traded cruel words, yet still feared the other couldn't take it, so they clung to each other, pouring out every raw emotion. Mayong still loves Yangbum deeply, just as she loves herself, so much that it hurts, until letting go is the only choice. To her, Yangbum was a lover, a friend, and family. She came from the island, stepping boldly into bustling Seoul, with no one to rely on. His companionship got her through her uncertain 20s. They fought, they suffered, but they also laughed and stood by each other. Yet every story must end. And so, Mayong's first love concludes, rushed yet solemn. But having had it at all is something to cherish. After the breakup, she loses her closest friend of 7 years. But the dearest friends of her 20 years, her parents, remain. In early 1995, to heal her heart, Mayong takes leave and briefly returns to Jeju. When she opens the door, Ae-sun and Gwansik freeze, then their eyes light up. 5 minutes ago, the house was silent. Now it buzzes with life. Ae-sun grins ear to ear, pulling out braised beef and marinated eggs, then rushing to grab pickled radish. She grumbles. Mayong likes hers well-soaked, Mayong prefers fresh, so she has to make both, but her smile is genuine. Gwansik quickly brings a heater and cushions, telling Mayong not to catch cold. He jokes she should have called ahead so he could have picked her up. Mayong knows her father worries. He always comes home at least an hour early when she visits. Her heart melts in the warmth, feeling safe for the first time in ages. Home life is simple: eat, sleep, repeat. Ae-sun cooks tirelessly, each meal different. Gwansik brings back Myung's favorite treats daily. They clumsily comfort her, filling her emptiness with steaming food. Even Myung, still in military service, calls. To cheer her up, Gwansik takes a day off to watch the sunrise at sea. At 4 a.m., he gently wakes her. Groggy, she snaps. He stays quiet and slips away. After scolding her father, Myung immediately feels regret. At that moment, she suddenly remembers how she used to wake up excitedly at 4 a.m. when traveling with Yeonbum. She gave him all her love but forgot to save some for her parents. Guilt-ridden, she steps out of her room and finds Gwansik already dressed, waiting for her on the sofa. He looks at her and grins. He knew she would come. On the shore, the wind tangles their hair as Gwansik tells Myung that sunrise brings energy. Every morning, when he sees the sunrise, he prays for his children's happiness. Staring at her father's rough hands, she realizes he has never slept in, not once, all these years, working tirelessly for the family. She asks how he overcomes his fear of the open sea. He says he just looks for the lights of other fishing boats. That's enough to calm him. He tells her it's okay if she never marries or fails at something. Her parents will always be her guiding light, ready to welcome her home whenever she's tired or hungry. Gwansik has given everything, yet he still feels he hasn't done enough. He wishes Myung had been born into a wealthy family. Hearing this, her eyes well up. She wouldn't trade him for the richest father in the world. In the distance, dawn breaks through the clouds, painting the sea in shimmering gold. Myung watches her father, her son, the one who always lights up the lonely ocean first, burning bright for his family. Years later, when that sun sets, she'll understand just how warm that moment by his side truly was. On their way back, they bump into Busangil. Myung, inheriting A-sun's boldness, ignores him completely. Watching father and daughter walk home hand in hand, Sangil burns with envy. Later, he tries dragging Hyunsuk out to see the sunrise, but she bluntly refuses, too busy planning to visit Myung. His temper flares. Fate is fair. You reap what you sow. Meanwhile, A-sun has her own way of comforting Myung. She eagerly suggests a new suitor, a handsome soul-educated civil servant with a sprawling golden citrus farm. A man like that, from a family like that, would never disappoint. Myung laughs helplessly. Just a year ago, she called off her engagement, after the invitations were sent. What will the neighbors say? But A-sun smirks and reveals she never mailed them. She knew her daughter would back out. After all, they raised her to have the courage to flip tables when needed. Then, gently, she tells Myung to seize the moment, enjoy life, and love boldly. Their words mend her broken heart, filling her with strength. It's time to move forward. Before leaving, Myung buys hand cream for Gwansik and a beautiful notebook for A-sun, encouraging her to keep writing poetry. Seeing the gifts on the table, her parents are deeply touched. That winter, A-sun says goodbye to her grandmother. Before passing, her grandmother suffers from dementia, forgetting almost everyone, except A-sun. Deep down, she carries guilt for not being able to support A-sun's education in her youth, a regret that lingers like a knot in her heart. In her final moments, her grandmother sees Gwangrai smiling at her. She knows she has kept her promise. Death erases everything, quiet as the winter. Sitting by the grave, A-sun realizes life's winter is approaching. She and Gwansik stay on Jeju Island, watching the horizon, missing their children. Life remains uneventful until 1996, when a storm hits. Myung returns from the military, and A-sun and Gwansik eagerly wait at home. But their joy shatters when Myung brings Hyunsuk, and worse, she's pregnant. The family tradition of premarital pregnancy strikes again like a dark joke, nearly knocking A-sun out. Meanwhile, Myung's love life stirs. Chung-sip, back from the military, spots her on a bus and chases after her, only to miss her in a crowd of fans. But fate isn't done with them yet, for now, Myung's mess takes priority. Pregnant, they must marry. Busangil disowns both his daughter and son-in-law, leaving the couple broke and stuck at home. A-sun and Gwansik have no choice but to accept it. In July 1996, Myung's son, Jil, is born. The chubby little boy wins everyone's hearts. Yongran secretly visits her grandson, happy her daughter found love, something she never had. Even Minoke and her stepfather send a lavish gift, a solid gold toad. They later start a rice cake business, thrive, and even buy a Mercedes. The gift is their way of making amends. Old grudges fade with time. But Myung remains a headache. Now a father, he still refuses to work hard, dreaming big while doing nothing. At Jil's first birthday, He announces a pawn shop venture with a friend. Ae-sun and Gwon-sik can't stop him. They brace for the fallout. The timing couldn't be worse. In 1997, the financial crisis hits South Korea. The economy shakes, and even Jeom Myung, who's always been outstanding, gets caught in the wave of layoffs. The company she works for shuts down, stocks crash, bankruptcies pile up. Against the tide of the times, ordinary people are like ants. No matter how hard they struggle, they're swallowed in an instant. The streets are filled with protests over job cuts. On the bus, Jeom Myung rehearses her interview lines over and over, clinging to every chance like a drowning person grasping at straws. Seoul and Jeju Island both struggle under the financial storm. Exhausted, Jeom Myung moves between them. Then, another blow. Can Theater will close for good in December. This place, full of memories, collapses under the crisis. Heartbroken, Jeom Myung watches one last movie there as a farewell. But she doesn't know, this was supposed to be a reunion. The theater owner, aware of Chung-sip's feelings, seats him next to her. Yet fate intervenes, and they miss each other again. By the time Chung-sip realizes, Jeom Myung is already on the bus. He refuses to give up. He chases after her, running until he's gasping for air. Luckily, he catches up. When Jeom Myung sees him, she's stunned. Is this a dream? After small talk, Chung-sip confirms she's single and sighs in relief. Then, he spills everything. He's found the perfect balance between dreams and reality. Now an art school teacher, he's the campus Picasso, chasing his passion with a steady income. That's why he dares to pursue her now. Jeom Myung reads his shyness and nerves in just a few words. Over soju, their feelings align, and a new love begins. Back when they first met, they were young, like sour green apples. Now ripe and sweet, the timing is just right. Compared to teenage romance, adult love has less passion but more comfort. They share the same humor, always laughing together. From past relationships, Jeom Myung learns, laughing daily is harder than kissing daily. That's why Chung-sip is her best choice. Their relationship moves fast. Soon, Jeom Myung takes Chung-sip to Jeju to meet her parents. On the ferry, he's seasick and awkward, a socially inept introvert who can't even drink properly. But he keeps trying, downing shots to impress Gwon-sik. Jeom Myung once said she won't marry without her parents' approval, so Chung-sip pushes harder. Drunk, he nearly kneels before Gwon-sik, his forced smile hilariously pitiful. Secretly, Gwon-sik already approves. Despite the clumsiness, he sees Chung-sip's sincerity. Even wobbly on deck, Chung-sip worries about Jeom Myung's safety. Gwon-sik quietly follows her even when she just goes to the bathroom, always watching over her. No matter how strong Jeom Myung is, as her father, Gwon-sik only wishes for someone to cherish her wholeheartedly, like parents would, and Chung-sip does exactly that. Meanwhile, Ae-sun is also pleased with this marriage for a simple reason. Unlike Yangbum's mother, Chung-sip's mother adores Jeom Myung. She handpicked the best persimmons from her hometown. So, in August 1998, Jeom Myung and Chung-sip marry in a wedding blessed by everyone. Jeom Myung, dressed in white, laughs freely under the blue sky. Nearby, a car pulls in quietly. Inside, Yangbum watches her gently through the crowd. Things have changed, but he keeps his promise. His eyes hold regret and pain, but mostly, they hold blessings. No matter what, he only wishes for Jeom Myung to thrive and shine. Jeom Myung doesn't notice his gaze. Her eyes are fixed on Chung-sip. Seeing her in her wedding dress, Chung-sip clutches his chest and playfully winks, making her laugh. In that moment, Jeom Myung realizes love has warmth. First love was beautiful, but it burned too hot and left scars. This warmth is just right, comforting, gentle, and freeing. Before the ceremony, Gwon-sik holds his daughter's hand and says firmly, "Don't be afraid. If you don't want to go through with it, just run to me." Tears spill from Jeom Myung's eyes. In her memory, her father has always protected her like this. Whether it was meals, school, or exams, his message was always the same: never settle. The doors open, and Gwon-sik walks Jeom Myung toward Chung-sip. She bursts into tears. Chung-sip ignores tradition and rushes to her side, even asking, "Still want to marry?" She cries harder but nods firmly. Even Eun Myung, who's always clashed with his sister, sobs uncontrollably. And Gwon-sik? He cries the most, more emotional than even Ae-sun, who watches him with tenderness. She knows, he's always favored Jeom Myung, and now that love is being shared with her husband. But that's okay, because Jeom Myung will only receive more love. Amid tears and laughter, Jia Myung steps into the next chapter of her life, now a daughter, a sister, and a wife. But life never lets us savor joy for long. Right after the wedding, misfortune strikes. Eun Myung is dragged into trouble when his partner Cheolong steals a 70 million won antique from a pawnshop and disappears. With no one else to blame, Eun Myung is forced to take the fall and lands in prison. Kwon-sik is furious and scolds Eun Myung harshly. But Eun Myung, full of resentment and under immense pressure, finally snaps. He shouts out what's been weighing on him. His parents always favor Jia Myung, praising her endlessly while never acknowledging him. The only reason he's obsessed with making money is to outshine his sister and finally get their attention. Eun Myung swallows hard, remembering his childhood. Jia Myung got birthday celebrations, but he never did, because his birthday was just 3 days before Dong Myung's death anniversary. When his grades improved slightly, Ae-sun barely glanced at his report card before turning to Jia Myung's near-perfect scores. At home, only Jia Myung and Kwon-sik got pork cutlets in their lunchboxes. When Eun Myung protested, Ae-sun dismissed him, saying his sister was picky, she had exams, and his father needed energy for work. For years, Eun Myung has lived in Jia Myung's shadow, desperate for his parents' approval but often getting the opposite. This unfair treatment has left him bitter yet still hopeful. He yells that he named his son Jail, or first in Korean, because he's never been first in his life. Kwon-sik, now beyond angry, shouts back, "Do you know how many pork cutlets your mother actually ate, you ungrateful fool?" Eun Myung, past caring, fires back, "Then don't bail me out. Your thankless son will pay his debt by sitting in jail." Nearby, Ae-sun is sobbing. She quickly stops Kwon-sik, her heart filled with regret. Meanwhile, Hyun-suk returns to her parents' home, begging her father, Boo Sang-gil, for 70 million to save Eun Myung. But Sang-gil flatly refuses. Heartbroken and desperate, Hyun-suk leaves in anger, cutting ties with her father. At the same time, with the help of the Haenyo, Ae-sun corners Cheol-ryung's mother. The women surround her, demanding Cheol-ryung's whereabouts. But the woman plays dumb, taunting Ae-sun and even insulting Eun Myung. In an instant, Ae-sun loses it, grabbing the woman's hair like a madwoman, defending her son. In the end, Ae-sun wins, emptying the woman's hair salon to pay off part of the debt. The mother has grown strong, but the father is the opposite. No matter how harsh his words, Kwon-sik still runs around trying to save his son. He begs for loans, his unbreakable pride forced to bend. But against a debt of 70 million, it's just a drop in the ocean. After much thought, Kwon-sik decides to sell his boat to pay Eun Myung's debt. It's not just a boat, it's 20 years of his life. On the day of the sale, he stays in the cabin, quietly packing his things, car magazines, fishing logs, poems Ae-sun once wrote him. This is all he has. In one poem, Ae-sun wrote that every day with Kwon-sik felt like spring. Now, with a bitter heart, he runs his rough, winter branch-like fingers over the paper, the sound like dry leaves rustling. He feels nothing but guilt toward his wife. After a lifetime of hard work, everything is gone. Where is the spring? Before leaving, Kwon-sik hands the fishing logs to the buyer, a man waiting eagerly on the shore with his wife and daughter, eyes full of hope, just like they once were. Kwon-sik knows he'll probably never be a captain anymore. Kwon-sik and Ae-sun scrape together enough money to bail Eun Myung out. Ae-sun tells him he's just as important as Jia Myung, their first child. No matter what, parents never give up on their kids. Eun Myung breaks down in tears, moved and full of guilt. The storm passes, but the 70 million won has drained the family. Life gets harder. With the financial crisis, everyone struggles. To survive, Ae-sun swallows her pride and sells squid in the noisy market. Once, she couldn't even bring herself to call out, "Sweet cabbage." Now, she smoothly greets customers and competes with other vendors. At the market, Ae-sun meets a little girl, Hye-ran. In the crowd, Hye-ran spots Ae-sun right away and tugs her mother toward the stall. Ae-sun doesn't know it, but this girl once found her ring in a field of rapeseed flowers. Their connection runs deeper than she realizes. In the market, Ae-sun brags about her husband and daughter, annoying the other vendors. But it's her last bit of dignity, a way to keep going. She never blames Kwon-sik, but he feels guilty. He admits he lied to her. Of the 3 promises he made, he kept none. Now she's stuck selling in a messy market. Frustrated, Kwon-sik sighs, "If I'd known it'd come to this, you should have rejected me when I pursued you." Ae-sun just smiles. Without him, she'd be an orphan with no one. Through all the hardships, she's never regretted marrying him. Time may change their looks, but not their hearts. Life is a sharp knife, wearing down the middle-aged and stripping the young of their pride. After prison, Unmayong grows withdrawn, his movements mysterious. One day, Hyun-suk tearfully tells Gwon-sik the truth. Unmayong is secretly selling rice cakes in the freezing cold, inspired by Ae-sun's stepfather and Min-ok. With a criminal record, no decent job will take him. Rumors spread, some think he stole money, but his rice cake business flops. For 6 or 7 hours, he shivers in the cold, with no customers. Gwon-sik sighs and goes to Busangil. He gives him money to secretly buy Unmayong's rice cakes, helping him while saving his pride. Sangil isn't as cold as he seems. He misses his daughter and grandson but won't admit it. Now that his old rival is family, he huffs and puts on a show before agreeing, not for Unmayong, but for Hyun-suk. But secrets don't stay hidden. Unmayong figures it out. Grateful but furious at his own helplessness, he runs away and boards a deep-sea fishing boat. The family panics. Offshore fishing is brutal. Even an experienced sailor could lose their life at sea, let alone a beginner like Unmayong. Desperate, Gwon-sik rushes to the dock, trying to call the fishing boat back. But the captain refuses, unwilling to take the loss, and insists on sailing further into the ocean. At the critical moment, Busangil steps in, paying double the price to bring Unmayong back. The moment Unmayong steps off the boat, Gwon-sik scolds him harshly. Ae-sun arrives just in time, her tears pouring out. Gwon-sik warns Unmayong that if anyone ever humiliates him again, he'll make them pay. Ae-sun, crying, apologizes to her son and promises to make him fried pork cutlets every day from now on. Their concern leaves Unmayong with mixed feelings, even more ashamed. To Ae-sun and Gwon-sik, he and Jeon-mayong are still just children, no matter how old they get. Out of respect for Gwon-sik, the ice factory owner gives Unmayong a job handling ice. Finally, the long-standing turmoil comes to an end. As the countdown begins, 1999 fades away, and the much-anticipated new millennium arrives. But this new era pushes them mercilessly toward failure. The financial crisis isn't over, and the whole family struggles to make ends meet, hitting rock bottom. Yet Ae-sun stays optimistic. She believes that after hitting the bottom, the only way is up. She's sure something big will happen for them in the new millennium. So, she makes a decision. She opens the notebook Jeon-mayong gave her and starts writing poetry again. Meanwhile, Jeon-mayong finds a new direction in the turbulent times. Seeing crisis as opportunity, she decides to start her own business, exploring the untapped potential of online education. Even Gwon-sik, cautious all his life, trembles as he stamps a bright red seal on a new contract. Like a ship long docked, its horn sounds again, a heartbeat echoing in the first winter of the new millennium. Everyone is ready to take a big leap forward, but they stumble almost immediately. It all ties back to the contract Gwon-sik signed. At the dawn of the new millennium, their bad luck continues. Jeon-mayong pours all her savings into her startup, moving into a tiny apartment. With money tight, she doesn't dare have children. Unmayong struggles at the ice factory, hurting his hand while trying to adjust. Ae-sun keeps selling goods at the market, sacrificing dignity for a few coins. Seeing his family suffer, Gwon-sik grows bitter. Life's gamble has never dealt him a good hand. The thought of his children inheriting this fate is unbearable. So, he decides to take a risk, selling their cabbage field, mortgaging their house, and buying land in the new Jeju tourist district to open a restaurant. The agent assures him the area has huge potential, resorts, golf courses, and he'll recoup his investment soon. Though doubtful, Ae-sun supports him unconditionally. For the first time in years, she sees excitement in Gwon-sik's eyes, just like the night they eloped. That alone is enough for her to stand by him. But Unmayong strongly disagrees, convinced his father is being reckless and scammed. With heavy hearts, the family heads to the tourist district. Meanwhile, the Bu household faces its own troubles. Yongran does something shocking. She stuns Busangil. After years as a devoted wife and mother, she finally breaks free. Before her mother-in-law passes, she leaves Yongran a fertile tangerine farm as thanks for her care. Yongran sells it, gets a license, and opens a real estate agency. She goes from a penniless housewife to an independent businesswoman. Now that she earns her own money, she never has to beg her husband again. She files for divorce. Busangil is stunned. At first, he thinks she's just upset and tries to fix things. But soon, he realizes she's serious. Yongran pours out years of pain, his temper, his affairs, his selfishness. The final straw? When Unmayong is falsely accused and begs for help, Busangil coldly refuses. His cruelty to their daughter breaks Yangran completely. From that moment she's done. Busangil can't argue, he's too proud to beg. They divorce. The children side with Yangran, ignoring him. He becomes a bitter, lonely old man, abandoned by everyone. Meanwhile, Yangran's new life is just beginning. Guansik isn't so lucky. When the family arrives at the tourist site, they're horrified. It's a wasteland. Worse, the broker vanishes. Guansik was scammed, but there's no turning back. They open a fast food shop in despair, but with no customers, business flops. Mayang explodes, yelling at his father, "If we'd kept that land, my son could have studied abroad." Sun clutches her chest, furious. "This was your father's money, not yours." Guansik sits frozen, looking lost. Then Mayang rushes in, breathless. She's raised enough money to go home. Later, Sun learns the truth. Mayang emptied her savings and begged for loans to save their house. Heartbroken, Sun tells her, "You shouldn't have taken this burden." But Mayang snaps. "How could I not? I'm the eldest, the one who holds this family together. Isn't that what you taught me?" Sun is stunned. "When did I ever say that?" Mayang cuts her off, sobbing. Even if Sun never said it, she can't escape the guilt. The family's love is also a crushing weight. In a burst of anger, she shouts, "Why did you sacrifice so much? Why did you give up everything, making me feel this endless debt?" The door slams open. Guansik, furious, calls her by her full name, the first time he's ever scolded her. Mayang snaps back to her senses, horrified by her words. But deep down, she's hiding a secret. The secret is so heavy that it makes Sun lose control of her emotions. After Mayang leaves, Sun and Guansik discover the truth and burst into tears. Mayang is pregnant. In her note she writes, "I'm sorry, my hormones are all over the place." The thought of Mayang, pregnant and still going out to borrow money, just like Sun once did, makes her cry even harder. Their daughter, their little girl, is about to become a mother herself. The memory of Mayang's birth feels so vivid, that tiny 3.1 kilograms baby who was once their whole world. Now she carries her own universe inside her. In August 2001, after 28 hours of labor, Mayang's daughter is born. The moment she holds her baby, Mayang sobs uncontrollably. Her first thought is of her mother. Sun was only 18 when she gave birth, with no pain relief, no grandmother by her side. How did she endure it? Mayang feels a newfound awe for her mother's strength. From now on, she too will carry the weight of a fragile life, guiding it through the long journey ahead. Yet, no matter how much of a mother she becomes, in her parents' eyes, she'll always be their child. Guansik and Sun fuss over her, barely sparing a glance for their granddaughter. All they see is their daughter, who just walked through death's door. Mayang names her daughter Little Spring, and miraculously, this new life does bring them a season of renewal. The financial crisis ends, Korea's economy recovers, and their restaurant finally stabilizes. After a brief slump, Guansik throws himself back into work, determined to serve the freshest, tastiest, most affordable squid. Decades of fishing have taught him one thing: with squid, anything is possible. They even start a delivery service. And at last, luck smiles on them. In May 2002, the Korea-Japan World Cup kicks off. By July, Jeju's duty-free shops open to locals. Riding this wave, tourism booms, and so does their restaurant. Then, a miracle, a famous actress walks in and offers to promote them. She's the woman Guansik saved back in the summer of 1987. At the time, she was drowning in scandal, ready to end her life, until Guansik gave her hope. She bounced back in 1993 and tried to repay him, but he just laughed and told her to forget it. Still, she never forgot his kindness. Now, she seizes the perfect chance to return the favor. It's an opportunity gifted by the times, and a reward for kindness. Even better, Mayang's wrongful accusation finds a breakthrough. Globalization spreads, the internet grows, and vintage resale sites take off. When Long tries to sell the stolen antiques online, he's caught red-handed. Ironically, thanks to Busangil. Turns out, Sangil had his own reasons for refusing to pay back then. He knew settling quietly would only stain Mayang's name forever. People would always see him as a thief with a record. The only way to clear his name was to catch Long. And now, at last, justice is served. So Busangil bribes the police. But they trick him. They take the money without solving the case, leaving it unsolved. Humiliated and resentful, he keeps it from his family. His relationship with Yangran is more complicated than it seems. Years ago, Ae-sun once let Yangran sneak out to dance, and the shoe Yangran dropped was picked up by Busangil, but he never mentioned it to his wife. When his children come home late, he waits in the living room, pretending not to care. Busangil is either purely good nor bad. Human nature is complex, not just black and white. The ties between people are delicate. Ae-sun has already made peace with her mother-in-law, and Gwansik reaches out to Busangil, inviting the lonely man to join them in running the restaurant. Time softens everything, blurring old grudges like watercolors. Hearts grow tender. No matter what, the harsh winter has passed, and a new spring is on the horizon. As spring arrives, the family thrives. The restaurant flourishes, even inspiring copycats. But Ae-sun and Gwansik don't mind. They focus on doing their best, offering endless free refills of squid soup as a gesture of goodwill. Jia Myong is busy building her business, recruiting talent. Woon Myong matures, no longer idle, and helps manage the shop. Life surges forward like joyful waves. Jia Myong's daughter turns 4, a lively, strong-willed child who keeps Jia Myong on her toes. In the midst of her career rise, juggling work and family, Ae-sun steps in like a savior to care for her granddaughter. Gazing at her small face, Ae-sun smiles and whispers, "Even if you're my granddaughter, if you tire out my daughter too much, I'll be a little upset. The person you take for granted is the one I treasure most. Be good to her, take care of her for a long, long time, okay?" Years later, Jia Myung realizes she knows every expression of her daughter's face but can barely recall Ae-sun's. That day, Ae-sun held her granddaughter on the balcony, waving goodbye. Jia Myung watched her daughter, while Ae-sun watched Jia Myung. Every mother sees only her own child. Only when their children are safe and happy can parents finally relax and live for themselves. In middle age, Gwansik picks up a guitar, his first real hobby. Others played for their sweethearts in youth, but he was too busy providing for his family. Now, he learns acoustic guitar, dreaming of playing for Ae-sun someday. Meanwhile, Ae-sun starts writing poetry in the notebook Jia Myung gave her. She dreams of traveling, dragging Gwansik to Zhangjuji when business slows down. After decades of hard work, it's time to rest. There's still so much ahead. Their happiness rubs off on their children. Jia Myung's career stabilizes, and she grows more confident, able to give her parents a better life. She books them a health checkup. Though they grumble about their daughter's spending, Gwansik and Ae-sun's eyes shine with pride. During the checkup, Gwansik, barely conscious, calls out Dong Myung's name and voices the guilt he's buried for years. Ae-sun finally understands why they've struggled to speak of Dong Myung. When pain outweighs longing, the past becomes too heavy to cherish. Still, their angel stayed with them for 4 years. As they grow older, it feels like they're inching closer to Dong Myung, until they reunite in another world someday. That day, Ae-sun writes a sweet little poem titled The Cutest Uncle and tells her grandchildren about the boy who stayed forever young, their uncle Dong Myung. The family often visits his grave with candy, and even his tiny spoon remains untouched. As long as they remember, Dong Myung lives on in their hearts, never alone. But just as life improves, fate swings its cruel side again. Spring arrives, yet the lingering chill cuts deep. The tests reveal Gwansik has myeloma, a blood cancer often mistaken for rheumatoid arthritis. He's endured the pain too long, and now it's too late. Kidney failure sets in. Ae-sun nearly faints. Jia Myung sobs. They have no choice but to start chemotherapy, praying for a miracle. Over the next months, Gwansik endures 24 rounds of chemo, enough to break even the strongest. He wastes away but still comforts Ae-sun. They walk hand in hand through blossoms and fallen leaves, but she no longer sees seasons, only her withering husband. Clumsily navigating hospital rules, they draw stairs. Watching her, Gwansik's heart shatters. She's his lifelong love, his deepest worry, the burden he can't bear to leave. He once imagined going after her, unable to stand her suffering alone. Now, before discharge, he quietly asks Jia Myung to care for Ae-sun. "Where are you going?" she cries. "I'm not grown yet. Stay with us, stay with Mom." His eyes brim with regret. If only he could. March 2006. Gwansik returns home. Woon Myung collapses in tears, confessing, as a boy, though birthdays lacked cake, his dad sneaked him out for sweet and sour pork and toy robots. The love was always there, he'd just been too weak to see it. Gwansik pats his head. "You're a father now. Don't embarrass yourself." Woon Myung begs for more time. He'll buy back the boat, get him a Mercedes. But fate plays no favorites. Gwansik's life is nearing its end, but Jim Myung's career is reaching its peak. She starts an online education company called No Matter Learning, and rides the wave of the digital education boom, achieving huge success. Jim Myung is invited to give a televised speech, where she tells everyone that her inspiration came from her mother. In her eyes, her mother was smart, hardworking, and eager to learn, but the times denied her the chance to pursue education. That's why Jim Myung wants to create opportunities for anyone, anywhere, as long as they have the desire to learn. She then adds that her determination comes from her father, who has spent his life battling the sea but never gave up. His perseverance and courage became the guiding light in her life. Everything she has today is because of her parents, so she'll do whatever it takes to make them proud. Watching from home, Ae-sun and Gwansik tear up, overwhelmed with emotion. That same year, the Haenyeo Museum opens, and Jeju's female divers proudly announce to the world, "We're still here. Our culture lives on." The struggles of the past have become badges of honor. The happiest moment comes in June, when Ae-sun's poem is published, a love letter to Gwansik. With tender words, she writes about their 50 years together. "My love, you've walked such a long, hard road. Thank you for weathering every storm with me." She looks at Gwansik playfully and says, "See, one of my 3 promises is fulfilled." Overjoyed, Gwansik lifts her up and spins her around, shouting to Eun Myung upstairs, "Buy 100 copies of your mom's poetry book and give them to the Fishing Association." Eun Myung's kids stare wide-eyed at their grandparents, while he sighs and grumbles, "Great, now they'll think love is all that matters in life." Laughter fills the house, upstairs and down. Ae-sun silently wishes time would freeze on this summer night. But no matter how much they wish otherwise, goodbyes must come. In November, Gwansik's condition worsens, and his life slips away. Jim Myung breaks down sobbing in the car. The days she shared with her father, once 13,881, now count down to 0. Eun Myung rushes to his side, crying as he bids his father farewell. Yet Ae-sun smiles through her tears as she waves goodbye. She once promised Gwansik she wouldn't cry. "If Ae-sun weeps, young Gwansik's heart will shatter." For a moment, time rewinds and they're young again. A lifetime together was more than enough. No regrets, only a hope to meet again in the next life. After years of tireless work, Gwansik finally rests. But he leaves behind gifts for his family. For Jim Myung, a savings account with every penny she ever sent home, untouched. For Eun Myung, a used Mercedes bought from Busangil. For Ae-sun, reminders of Gwansik are everywhere. The moon never disappears in daylight, people just can't see it. Ae-sun knows Gwansik has always been there. Silent longing finds its voice on paper. Another winter comes, snow covering the ground. Time muffles the noise of grief. Years later, Ae-sun finishes an entire book of poems. These words won't fade away. Jim Myung gathers the poems and sends them to Chloe Lee, the editor-in-chief of Haiwa Publishing. This Chloe Lee turns out to be Hairan, and even more astonishing, she looks exactly like Gwangrai, as if reborn. She grew up in a happy home, working at a desk job, just as Gwangrai once dreamed. She still dives, but now for pleasure, not survival. For some reason, reading Ae-sun's poems brings Hairan to tears, filling her with tenderness. She feels an inexplicable pride for this stranger. The lost ring, the noisy market, the weight of the poetry book. She realizes her bond with Ae-sun was written long ago. In 2024, Ae-sun's poetry collection is published. She's 73 now. She enjoys visiting the nursing home, teaching poetry. They call her Teacher O. Jim Myung, now middle-aged and successful, buys back Gwangrai's old house and gives it to her mother. Life has come full circle. Looking back, Ae-sun's life took unexpected turns, from a helpless orphan to a mocked bookish girl, a joyful captain's wife, a confident chairwoman then a struggling squid vendor. Now she's a teacher, a poet. She once thought life moved in order, spring, summer, fall, winter, but now she sees it shifts between seasons. She's had countless springs, enough to light up her days. Before reuniting with Gwansik, she'll live fully, making every day feel like spring. The story ends here, but its final teller isn't Ae-sun. It's Jim Myung. In the last lines she writes, "To my parents, who walked through all seasons, with regret, gratitude, and deepest respect, thank you for weathering every storm." If you liked my recap, please subscribe for supporting me to make more videos like this. Thanks for watching.